How do you do, everyone? The boys are coming home, and certainly none of them are any happier to get home than those who have been behind the enemy's barbed wire. Sitting across me, or rather across this microphone from me, is one of those officers who has been, for 39 months, a prisoner of the Japanese. He's Major William D. Miner of Vermont, Illinois. Major Miner, will you tell us first, where did you go to school?
I went to school at Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois.
And did you take military training there?
Yes, I took ROTC and got my commission as a second lieutenant in 1936.
And when did you go into federal service, that is, in the Army?
I went into federal service on the 22nd of May, 1941. I was only at Fort Hays a short time, about 2 or 3 days, until they ordered me to the Philippines.
That was a quick shipping out, I should judge.
Yes, I left on June the 5th and arrived in Manila around the 24th. Once in Manila, I was assigned to the 31st Infantry as an officer of the service company. The 31st Infantry was located in Manila, in the walled city that you've perhaps heard that the Japanese made their final stand.
And where did you next go?
From the 31st Infantry, I was assigned to command and train a Filipino training camp on the island of Bohol, where I was stationed for 3 months.
And that brought you up very closely to the 1st of December, 1941.
Yes. A day or two prior to the 1st of December, I was ordered to Sternberg General Hospital because of some stomach trouble.
That hospital is in Manila, is it, Bill?
Correct. It was in this hospital that I received the first news that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor.
Previous to that, had you had any hint of impending trouble?
Yes. From a civilian, an employee of the Alexander Young Hotel in Honolulu. I happened to be passing a time of day with him around the 10th of June, 1941, on the way out, and he made the remark that they'd be very lucky if Honolulu wasn't blown off the map.
And it very nearly was, just about 6 months later. So in Manila, would you tell us something about that December 8th, the attack on Manila? Were you in the hospital at that time?
Yes, I was in the hospital at that time when the news came over the radio. It seemed hard to believe, and yet we knew that such a thing had been possible for some time. There was very little flurry or excitement. We knew that there was a job to be done. The Japanese were soon over the Philippine Islands. They had absolute air superiority, and they destroyed most of our planes and a great many of our ships around.
Do you think, Major Miner, that the Japanese population in the Philippines had advanced knowledge of the impending attack?
I personally think that they did. The Japanese at that time were very arrogant. Were you to walk into a Japanese store, they didn't care whether they sold you anything or not. Some of them crowded Filipinos off the street. They seem to have the idea, well, it won't be long before we'll be overlords of this territory.
How did you leave Manila?
There was an ammunition ship scheduled to go to the island of Mindanao. I got out on this ammunition ship, which ran the Japanese blockade of Manila Bay, and got down to the island of Cebu on the 14th of December.
And how long were you able to hold out there, Major Miner?
Our forces held out on the island of Cebu until the 17th of May, 1942. While there, as communications officer under General Chanowitz, I had the unique experience of being the liaison officer, one of them, between the general and the Japanese forces when it came to arranging surrender, not terms, but conditions.
And what happened at the actual surrender?
Our men, very orderly, stacked our arms at the appointed location, lined up in columns of fours, and a company of Japanese soldiers came and surrounded us. As soon as the Japanese surrounded us and their officers went away to hold a staff meeting as to what was to be done with us immediately, the Japanese soldiers started looting us. They took everything that they thought that we attached any value to at all. Billfolds, rings, pens, watches, pictures of our wives and sweethearts. Some of the pictures they just deliberately took out of the billfolds, looked at them and tore them before our faces and threw them away.
Seemed to be a deliberate policy of...
Very deliberate policy of asserting their superiority.
Where did they then take you, Major Miner?
They placed us in the Cebu Provincial Jail for 5 months. During that time, about all they did for us in the way of food was to give us turnips and parsnips, pimentos, and a few things of that type that they did not care for. We could make a thin stew out of that, and then they gave us a small amount of coarse corn meal.
It doesn't sound like a very sustaining diet. How much weight did you lose, Bill?
I must have lost 20 pounds within that 5 months. No activity at all except lying on the cement floor of the jail.
And then where was the next move after you left that prison camp?
They moved us to Mindanao, the Davao Penal Colony. And during the next few months, until June of 1944, about 2,000 American prisoners were held there, and they did the work of coolie labor on the penal colony plantations.
And when did you leave Mindanao?
I left Mindanao in a prison ship with about 1,250 other prisoners about June 6th of 1944. We went from Davao to Luzon, and we were for about 3 months in the prison camp of Cabanatuan.
And when did you people in the camp hear of D-Day in Western Europe?
We got grapevine rumors once we got into the prison camp at Cabanatuan. Nothing was substantial, though.
What sort of conditions were there at Cabanatuan, and was there food, and how much, and what sort of work did you have to do?
There was very little food. The work was mostly farm work under coolie conditions. We worked in potato fields, cassava fields, rice fields. Some of the men told me when I was planting rice that the rice paddies that I was standing in mud up to my knees held the bones of several hundred of my American comrades.
And Major Miner, when did you men there first see evidences of America's power, its comeback?
It came as a surprise on the 21st of September.
Last year?
Of 1944. We were out in the cassava fields, and a tremendous roar of planes came from over the mountains in the east. We couldn't understand why Japanese planes would be coming out of the east, and the Japanese guards were very uneasy. However, they were astonished as we were.
These were carrier planes?
Yes, they were carrier planes from one of our carrier forces. And I must say that never in my life did I dream of ever seeing such a grand sight as I saw when perhaps 350 to 400 planes came flying overhead, striking at the various Japanese units. If any of you people ever wonder where your money for war bonds went, I can tell you. I saw them flying over.
You saw it hit the front line, did you?
I saw it hit the front line.
Well, that must have been certainly an unique experience.
Our boys were very quiet at the time. Finally, one of them did blurt out, "Well, I'll bet those boys had ham and eggs for breakfast."
Something that the rest of you had probably forgotten existed. Well, after that, Major Miner, I understand the Japanese made every effort to get prisoners out of the Philippines. What happened to you?
I was sent down to Bilibid Prison on the 12th of October. 2 weeks later, they had about 1,600 of us down there ready to go. But our planes kept coming back and raiding so heavily and so steadily that they held us there until the 13th of December. During that time, during the previous 17 days to the 13th, our planes didn't do any raiding. They got some ships into the harbor, and on the 13th they put 19 American prisoners.
1,619 men.
Correct. In the hold of the Orinoco Maru. We sailed out of the harbor the evening of the 13th, underwent 8 air attacks the next day, in which the ship was so badly damaged that the Japanese took their own civilians and the Japanese soldiers off during the night of the 14th, 15th, and they left the American prisoners on. They attempted to hide the ship next to an island. Our dive bombers came back at dawn the next day, attacked it again, dropped a bomb in the hold, and blew the side out of the ship. They killed a great many of our friends and shot those who attempted to escape.
And then, of course, our flyers had no way of knowing it was a prison ship. Then what happened, Bill?
Those of us who could swam ashore, and the Japanese herded us into a tennis court, kept us there for several days, moved us on up to Lingayen Gulf, put us on board another ship, and we sailed for Ticao in Formosa about 2 weeks before MacArthur landed at Lingayen.
And after you left Formosa, you were then taken to Japan?
Yes, we were bombed again in Japan and lost a lot of men. We arrived in Japan on October 30th. Of the 1619 men that started out, there are today about 300 left alive.
300 out of 1,619?
Yes, sir.
Well, Major Miner, we understand that you were then taken to Manchuria and were finally rescued, I believe you said, August 18th.
Yes.
And you came home by way of Kunming, China, and Manila.
That is correct.
Well, certainly you're entitled to an opinion, Major Miner, if anyone is, on what to do about it so that it doesn't happen again. What should we do?
There's only one answer to that in my estimation. You have to be ready for any eventuality, regardless of what it may be. That means that we can't ever go to sleep. America is the most desired country in the world to live in. No other country in the world has such a high standard of living. Every body that has a chance desires greatly to come to America. And the Japanese have long had the idea that they would like to be in America. Their officers told me so. And even after the surrender, one of their officers told me, we'll be back again.
Well, that is a warning which we certainly should take to heart. Certainly, one who has been for 39 months behind barbed wire understands the meaning and the desirability of liberty. We want to thank you very much, Major Miner, for being a guest of WLS at this time. Friends, you've been listening to Major William D. Miner, who has been a prisoner of the Japanese, but is now home and is going back home to Vermont, Illinois.